Your lawyers are stupid. It's like he's like being nice here. He's like, your lawyers are really stupid.
Blake Lively's carefully constructed Hollywood image just imploded in a spectacular courtroom detonation. This wasn't a subtle legal setback. It was a public evisceration witnessed by the world.
So we're gonna slap that down. You obviously cannot do that.
Imagine confidently striding into court, wielding what you believe to be a legal atomic bomb, only to have it boomerang and obliterate you instead. That's the precise scenario that unfolded as a judge systematically dismantled her legal strategy, branding her team's demands not merely unreasonable but ridiculous, creepy, and frankly insulting to the very concept of justice.
We have to distinguish between the two, what a standard court protective order is and what Blake Lively's team is asking for, which is an attorney's eyes only designation.
We're not discussing a minor disagreement over contracts. This is a case of breathtaking legal overreach, so detached from common sense and ethical boundaries that it transcends mere celebrity drama and enters the realm of shocking spectacle. This isn't just a courtroom skirmish. It's a full-blown Hollywood circus of hubris and miscalculation, culminating in a meltdown so profound it demands to be dissected to be believed. Prepare yourself, because the granular details of Blake Lively's courtroom catastrophe are even more astonishing, more unbelievable than any tabloid headline could convey.
That is the kindest way that a judge can say to you that your lawyers are stupid. It's like he's like being nice here. He's like, your lawyers are really stupid.
The courtroom atmosphere must have been charged with electricity, a palpable tension hanging in the air as Judge Lewis Lyman unleashed a verbal barrage that resonated far beyond the courtroom walls, reverberating through the gilded corridors of Hollywood itself. This wasn't a gentle reprimand or a polite correction, it was a judicial mauling, a forceful and unequivocal takedown. He communicated with the measured but unmistakable force of judicial authority that Blake Lively's highly compensated legal representatives were, in essence, behaving foolishly. Their primary offensive? A demand that Justin Baldoni surrender his entire digital existence for forensic scrutiny. We're talking about an exhaustive, invasive probe into years of intimate data. Every fleeting text message, every logged phone conversation, every entry in call histories, detailed records of doctor's appointments, and even the granular tracking of his geographical movements through location data, essentially a comprehensive digital strip search extending back years, omitting only perhaps his private thoughts. The judge, possessing a clarity of vision seemingly absent from Lively's legal team, penetrated this transparent veil of legal maneuvering, identifying her tactics for what they genuinely represented: a lamentable and ultimately unsuccessful attempt to leverage legal power into an undeserved victory. It was a courtroom excoriation of epic proportions, leaving no room for ambiguity regarding the victor and the vanquished, the respected and the ridiculed. But the judge's displeasure wasn't merely professional, it bordered on outright disbelief at the sheer audacity and irrationality of her team's approach.
If the judge actually grants that kind of a protection order, the attorneys would become the judge of what exactly could be designated AEO. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
To truly grasp the magnitude of this data intrusion request, let's delve deeper into its staggering scope. Blake Lively's legal apparatus wasn't requesting a limited snapshot of recent communication. They were demanding a sweeping retrospective excavation spanning 2.5 years of intensely personal data. 2.5 years. Envision, if you can, the sheer volume of information encompassed within such a time frame. A digital biography laid bare, encompassing countless interactions, private exchanges, and sensitive details. It's not merely an infringement upon personal boundaries, it's a profound assault on the fundamental right to privacy, a chillingly comprehensive surveillance demand that ventures into territory many would legitimately characterize as, well, the term psychopathic has indeed been invoked in discussions surrounding this case, and upon closer examination, it's a description that carries a disturbingly accurate resonance. And their invasive ambitions didn't stop at Baldoni himself. This indiscriminate, dragnet demand extended its reach to encompass communications involving his dedicated public relations personnel, essentially casting a net across every professional interaction, every strategic discussion, every confidential communication within his professional sphere. The judge, displaying commendable judicial restraint, formally designated this request as overly intrusive, a clinical legal term that, translated into plain language, explodes into a resounding, incredulous question. Are you seriously suggesting this? The truly bewildering facet of this legal maneuver? They were aggressively pursuing access to this vast ocean of data stretching back into the past, predating the very inception of the alleged smear campaign that supposedly triggered this legal action. It resembles initiating a criminal investigation into a hypothetical offense, a preemptive fishing expedition launched before any discernible crime has even occurred. It defies all logical frameworks, and the judge, with commendable directness, ensured that the profound lack of rationality inherent in their approach was unequivocally highlighted. And just when you might begin to believe the situation couldn't descend further into absurdity, Blake Lively's legal team elected to engage in a perilous and ultimately self-defeating game of public relations manipulation.
The judge in Blake Lively's case just slapped down their psychopathic request for 2.5 years worth of every message that Justin Baldoni and Justin Heath and the PR agents have ever sent to everybody, plus location data. We knew that was going to happen.
The scope of this legal maneuver transcended a targeted pursuit of information directly pertaining to Justin Baldoni. In reality, Blake Lively's legal contingent appeared to be embarked upon a sprawling, indiscriminate fishing expedition, casting their legal nets across the entirety of Baldoni's digital ocean, hoping to haul in, well, anything at all. Their objectives seemed less about uncovering specific evidentiary proof and more about generating a blizzard of data, an overwhelming volume of information designed to intimidate and potentially uncover any remotely compromising detail, regardless of its relevance to the actual legal dispute. Consider the sheer magnitude of the data they sought to extract. It wasn't merely about scrutinizing Baldoni's communications in isolation. It was about demanding access to the intricate web of connections, the entire tapestry of interactions he maintained with everyone within his professional and perhaps even personal circles. This wasn't simply about a privacy violation, it represented a deliberate act of intimidation, a calculated demonstration of raw, unbridled power. It conveyed a chilling message. We possess virtually limitless resources, and we will relentlessly dissect every facet of your existence, scrutinizing every digital corner until we unearth something, anything, that can be twisted to serve our narrative. But what conceivable objective underlay this voracious data grab? A genuine quest for tangible evidence to substantiate their legal claims? Hardly credible. The entire endeavor exuded an aroma of desperation, of a legal team grasping at vaporous straws, desperately seeking to compensate for a glaring deficiency in actual verifiable proof. They were attempting to strong-arm their way to a favorable outcome, leveraging the sheer weight of legal pressure, hoping to unearth some ambiguous detail, some potentially misconstrued communication that could be retroactively spun to legitimize their initially unsubstantiated accusations. The judge, however, possessing a keen and discerning legal eye, correctly perceived this tactic for its true nature. A groundless and ethically questionable endeavor to harass, intimidate, and overwhelm, all stemming from a foundational inability to substantiate their allegations with concrete, verifiable evidence. However, regardless of the degree of spin applied, the subsequent revelation proved impossible to deflect or conceal.
Blake Lively had modified the request, did not meet those standards, that the request was overly intrusive and disproportionate to the needs of the case.
Following their resounding defeat in the courtroom arena, one might reasonably anticipate a period of strategic retreat from a legal team, a moment for sober reassessment, for damage control, and perhaps, just perhaps, a grudging acknowledgement of miscalculation. But Blake Lively's legal representatives elected a dramatically different path. Instead of accepting the undeniable reality of their courtroom route, instead of absorbing the lessons of judicial rebuke, they embarked upon a breathtakingly audacious attempt to transmute this clear legal setback into a fabricated narrative of victory. Yes, against all logic and credible interpretation, they actively engaged with media outlets, disseminating a thoroughly distorted account of the proceedings, audaciously claiming that the presiding judge had merely suggested a narrowing of their request. A narrowing of their request? This brazen misrepresentation flew directly in the face of the judge's explicit pronouncements. Their request had been unequivocally condemned as a gross violation of established privacy norms, fundamentally illogical in its premise, and demonstrably beyond the bounds of acceptable legal practice. It's akin to being informed that one's residence is engulfed in flames, and then boasting that the fire department merely recommended utilizing a slightly less powerful water cannon. The sheer audacity of this attempted deception is truly breathtaking in its scope, and the unfolding absurdity escalates further. Despite having been publicly and unambiguously censured for their ethically questionable and invasively aggressive tactics, what course of action did they subsequently adopt? They doubled down with unwavering commitment. They proceeded to file additional subpoenas, seemingly undeterred and utterly oblivious to the resounding legal and ethical condemnation they had just received. It's a scenario akin to intentionally setting one's own house ablaze and then initiating legal action against the fire department for failing to permit continued occupancy of the smoldering ruins. Desperate to regain any semblance of control over a rapidly deteriorating situation, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds then executed a maneuver so spectacularly ill-conceived, so profoundly lacking in strategic foresight that it bordered on the realm of pure comedic theater.
You are not able to hold a logical thought, but guess what? I, as a judge, I am able to hold a logical thought, so we're gonna slap that down. You obviously cannot do that.
Just as the narrative threatened to settle into a pattern of escalating legal missteps and public relations fiascos, a genuine seismic bombshell detonated, irrevocably altering the landscape of the case. Unforeseen and undeniably impactful leaked audio surfaced, exposing a level of calculated duplicity, a degree of brazen hypocrisy that rendered previous miscalculations almost trivial in comparison. Recall Blake and Ryan's carefully constructed posture of innocent detachment, their insistent denials of any involvement in the professional misfortunes that befell Justin Baldoni, specifically his loss of lucrative business engagements and his abrupt severing of ties with his prominent talent agency, WME. That meticulously crafted facade of plausible deniability crumbled instantly, revealing a starkly contrasting reality beneath. Enter Ari Emanuel, a figure of immense power and influence within the Hollywood ecosystem, caught in a moment of unscripted candor, audibly admitting that he personally orchestrated Baldoni's professional downfall at the direct behest of Blake and Ryan. This wasn't unsubstantiated rumor or speculative conjecture. This was Emanuel himself, his voice recorded, his words unambiguous, confessing to an act of deliberate career sabotage driven by the demands of Lively and Reynolds. And the truly astonishing element, this potentially case-decisive audio evidence was never intended for public consumption. It originated from a recording of the generally low-profile Freakonomics podcast, a recording that subsequently and quite conveniently vanished. However, fate, or perhaps the journalistic instinct of an attendee, intervened. A journalist present in the room possessed the foresight and initiative to covertly record the session, capturing Emanuel's incriminating admission for posterity. The content of Emanuel's leaked pronouncements is not merely embarrassing or politically awkward for Blake and Ryan, it constitutes a potentially catastrophic legal liability, transforming a simmering dispute into a full-blown conflagration with potentially far-reaching ramifications. But even this devastating revelation couldn't fully prepare the public for the next act in this unfolding drama. A move so overtly manipulative and transparently desperate, it defied even the already lowered expectations.
And he felt that the subpoenas of the Wayfarer party's phone records, even as Blake Lively had modified the request, did not meet those standards.
In a strategic gambit that resonated with the unmistakable clang of desperation, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds opted to deploy a truly extraordinary instrument of damage control. They engaged the services of Nick Shapiro, a former deputy chief of staff at the Central Intelligence Agency. Yes, you read that correctly. A seasoned operative from the clandestine world of international intelligence. Pause for a moment and contemplate the implications of this decision. Why would a celebrity embroiled in a civil legal dispute enlist the expertise of an individual whose professional background is rooted in government espionage, covert operations, and crucially public manipulation? Unless the true objective extended far beyond the confines of legal argumentation and ventured into the murky territories of narrative control and orchestrated deception. This is the very same Nick Shapiro who gained notoriety for his pivotal role in propagating the widely discredited narrative surrounding the Hunter Biden laptop, actively participating in the dissemination of the demonstrably false claim that it constituted Russian disinformation, a politically charged assertion widely perceived as a deliberate falsehood designed to influence public perception. Lively, who ostensibly positions herself as the aggrieved victim of a malicious smear campaign, has now aligned herself with a figure demonstrably skilled in and professionally associated with the very art of orchestrating and disseminating sophisticated smear campaigns. The inherent irony is so dense, so palpable it could almost be physically extracted from the air. It's a maneuver so transparently calculated, so devoid of subtlety, so overtly suggestive of manipulative intent that it borders on the absurd. They have seemingly transitioned into a state of full deep state operational mode, recruiting a recognized master of public deception, a seasoned architect of manufactured narratives, to attempt the Herculean task of retroactively spinning their courtroom debacle into some semblance of a strategic triumph. However, the prevailing sentiment among the informed public suggests that this latest tactic, far from mitigating the escalating crisis, may in fact serve to further amplify the perception of calculated manipulation and erode any remaining vestiges of public sympathy. And while this high-stakes PR maneuver unfolded, Justin Baldoni's legal team was undoubtedly strategizing, preparing to capitalize on the accumulating missteps of their adversaries.
He says even though Lively has narrowed her request to exclude the content of calls or messages, the phone records themselves will still contain sensitive information regarding doctors, psychologists, or even acquaintances.
The currents of public opinion, once perhaps tentatively aligned with Blake Lively's carefully curated persona, have demonstrably shifted, now surging with increasing momentum in a decidedly unfavorable direction. The cumulative weight of the courtroom humiliation, the irrefutable evidence of the leaked audio, and the almost farcical deployment of a CIA operative, these elements have coalesced to forge a public relations cataclysm of truly epic proportions. The digital sphere has erupted in a chorus of critical commentary, with the pointed phrase "Blake Lively's Karen moment" rapidly ascending to trending status, fueled by viral comparisons of her perceived courtroom demeanor to the archetypal embodiment of entitled privilege and unwarranted indignation. Mimetic representations are proliferating across social media platforms, ruthlessly lampooning her series of legal miscalculations and the perceived arrogance underpinning her actions. Even segments of her previously devoted fan base are now exhibiting signs of critical reevaluation, openly questioning her motivations and expressing unease regarding the potential instrumentalization of the Me Too movement for purposes of personal vendetta. The prominent commentator Candace Owens, known for her uncompromising and often inflammatory pronouncements, publicly excoriated Lively and Reynolds for their perceived elitist arrogance, accusing them of transforming the cultural landscape of Hollywood into their exclusive and self-serving political battleground. The dominant narrative is undergoing a radical transformation, shifting decisively away from the sympathetic portrayal of Blake Lively as a wronged victim and coalescing around the increasingly compelling image of Blake Lively as a Hollywood power player, leveraging influence and resources to pursue a potentially unjust and vindictive agenda. And as her public relations apparatus struggles to contain the burgeoning damage, the internet, with its characteristic blend of cynicism and humor, revels in dissecting, scrutinizing, and satirizing her every misstep with unrestrained enthusiasm. Consequently, the pivotal question now dominating public discourse: what are the long-term ramifications of this unfolding crisis for Blake Lively's future trajectory within the fiercely competitive and unforgiving arena of Hollywood? The prevailing consensus suggests that the outlook is at best precarious and at worst potentially career-altering. And while the digital court of public opinion renders its increasingly harsh verdict, Justin Baldoni and his legal team are meticulously assembling their counter-strategy, poised to exploit every vulnerability exposed by Lively's increasingly desperate maneuvers.
But according to Lively's own complaint, this negative campaign did not begin until August of 2024. And then he cites her own filings and says, "Ma'am, you filed a lawsuit saying," quotes, "that the beginning of the plan to destroy Lively's reputation began in August of 2024.
While Blake Lively and her crisis management team engage in a frantic rearguard action to salvage her rapidly eroding public image, Justin Baldoni is strategically positioning himself for a potentially devastating counteroffensive. Legal analysts and commentators are increasingly converging on the assessment that Baldoni now possesses an exceptionally robust defamation case, primarily predicated upon the irrefutable evidentiary weight of Ari Emanuel's leaked confession, that unguarded audio recording in which Emanuel unequivocally admits to orchestrating Baldoni's professional blacklisting at the direct urging of Lively and Reynolds, constitutes legal gold, providing irrefutable documentation of deliberate and damaging interference in Baldoni's career trajectory. This isn't merely a matter of wounded pride or bruised egos. The stakes are profoundly financial and professionally existential. Careers within the upper echelons of Hollywood command valuations in the millions, and Lively's concerted smear campaign has demonstrably deprived Baldoni of substantial professional opportunities and associated financial rewards. Should Baldoni elect to pursue legal action for career sabotage, Lively and Reynolds could find themselves facing a potentially ruinous financial judgment, a multi-million-dollar liability that would represent a tangible and lasting consequence of their actions. And in a dynamic uniquely characteristic of the entertainment industry, Hollywood often embraces narratives of redemption with particular fervor. Should Baldoni prevail in this legal confrontation, he stands poised to emerge from the crucible of this public ordeal not merely unscathed, but demonstrably strengthened, his professional standing potentially elevated by the very controversy intended to diminish him. Conversely, Blake Lively's once ascendant career trajectory appears increasingly to be locked in a steepening downward spiral, her professional prospects dimmed by the accumulating weight of legal missteps and public disapprobation. The silence emanating from her once vocal coterie of A-list celebrity associates is deafening, an eloquent testament to the shifting tides of Hollywood favor. No public pronouncements of support, no demonstrative displays of solidarity, no celebrity endorsements, only a stark, echoing silence. Within the Darwinian ecosystem of Hollywood, when the scent of professional vulnerability permeates the air, allegiances are notoriously fluid and often fleeting. Blake Lively's career, once radiating an aura of invulnerability and golden promise, is now emitting an increasingly unmistakable odor of professional dead weight, prompting a strategic exodus from those once eager to bask in her reflected glow. Will she manage to navigate the treacherous legal and public relations rapids ahead? Will she somehow mitigate the cascading damage to her reputation and career? Or is she destined to become a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the perils of unchecked Hollywood power and the enduring power of public opinion? The unfolding chapters of this Hollywood drama promise to be both compelling and potentially devastating.
Now you're requesting to see everything dating back from 2022. He writes, it is therefore unclear how communications to and from Wayfarer parties in 2022 would reveal individuals who participated in the campaign.
Let's meticulously dissect this unfolding Hollywood train wreck, shall we? Blake Lively, anticipating a swift and decisive legal victory, instead encountered a humiliating and comprehensive courtroom defeat. The presiding judge, with judicial precision, dismantled her legal strategy, branding her team's core tactics as illogical, invasive, and ethically dubious. The subsequent emergence of leaked audio provided irrefutable evidence of her hypocrisy and potential orchestration of career sabotage against Justin Baldoni. Her strategically questionable decision to enlist a CIA operative for damage control, far from salvaging her reputation, has demonstrably backfired, reinforcing the public perception of calculated manipulation and further eroding her credibility. And crucially, public sentiment has undergone a seismic shift, decisively turning against her, fueled by a growing perception of elitism, arrogance, and potential abuse of power. Blake Lively embarked upon this legal and public relations campaign with the apparent expectation of leveraging Hollywood influence and sophisticated PR tactics to effectively neutralize Justin Baldoni. Instead, she finds herself increasingly isolated, exposed, and potentially facing significant legal and professional repercussions. This unfolding legal and public relations disaster is far from reaching its denouement. With the specter of the next court date looming ominously on the horizon, the situation for Hollywood's former Golden Girl is poised to deteriorate further. Brace yourselves for the escalating fallout. What has transpired thus far may well prove to be merely a prelude to an even more profound and potentially career-ending round of legal and public embarrassment. The Hollywood meltdown of Blake Lively is unfolding in real time, a spectacle of hubris and consequence, and it is a drama far from its final act. Subscribe now for continued in-depth updates as this captivating and cautionary Hollywood narrative continues to unfold. This disaster is far from over, and the concluding chapters promise to be both dramatic and deeply revealing. You will not want to miss what transpires next.